Welcome to LilyTube. If you are wondering what Lily stands for, it's an acronym for Love in Later Years. As relationship coaches, we help singles recover from divorce and other relationship loss so they can move forward and create a life they love that is full of healthy, loving relationships, even though they may feel rejected and unlovable. Today, we're reacting to Love Life, an American romantic comedy series starring Anna Kendrick as Darby, the main character. She experiences all those feelings of rejection and feeling unlovable, and it's really interesting to see her journey. And our remarks are going to be focused on season 1 when she is the main character and her love life. Let's talk about Darby first. She's the main character. Following her parents' divorce, she struggles to make connections, and she's quite awkward. And I think Anna Kendrick plays awkward better than any other actress ever.
Awkward but cute.
Awkward and cute, yes. And this leads her to do things like trying too hard. And this struggle to make connections leads her to do some things that aren't really good for her, like trying too hard to start and keep relationships. Also, she's willing to put up with a lot of mistreatment because she doesn't want to be rejected so much because she believes that means she's not lovable. And it's just too painful to think about. Another thing that Jeff pointed out in the series is that she would have sex as soon as there was any spark with anyone. And
all of her relationships started with a one-night stand.
Pretty much. She also started being what we call a dating chameleon, where she would mold herself to whatever their preference is. She'd try to be that so that she could get the relationship. And then once she had the relationship, she would lose herself in the world of whoever she was with,
thus making her miserable.
So let's talk about her first love.
Yeah, Luke was her first relationship, and that happened in high school while she was away from home at boarding school, which incidentally, she applied for boarding school hoping her parents would beg her not to go and thus prove their acceptance.
Yeah, apparently they were just fine if she left.
Instant connection with Luke came during Thanksgiving break while everybody was gone and her family was off having fun during Thanksgiving without her. Anyway, they had this kind of cute little dalliance, this little romance during the holiday. But once school started again, she was still interested. She still wanted to be a couple, and he was kind of like, yeah, I've done that. And so after the holiday break was over, Luke hooked up with Darby's roommate, and Darby was, to say the least, devastated. But she didn't want to feel humiliated while she's there in the hallway crying over an understandable thing to feel humiliated by. So she tells her roommate she's not upset, that it doesn't even matter what this person did with Luke because she has cancer. Of course, she didn't have cancer. She got plenty of empathy, though, and even Luke came back around and told her he loved her. But when her lie was discovered, she basically had to leave school, and the whole traumatizing ordeal shaped Darby's future love life and experiences.
What a terrible way to start your love life.
We both laughed our heads off when she did that, though.
Now let's talk about Augie, her first real adult relationship with a charming Asian man who she feels really instantly very comfortable with. As their relationship progresses, they finally profess their love for each other, but then he moves for work, which is really sad because, she's finally in a relationship that she feels like could actually go somewhere. And later he actually moves back and she runs into him and he already has a new girlfriend instead of reconnecting with Darby, and that just really stings her. It hurts. She also ran into him unprepared, underdressed, and felt really stupid.
It's in her mind that he chose first the job and then the new girl over her. After Augie, she takes up with Bradley, who is her former boss, recently divorced, and they become kind of an item.
And incidentally, her last night with Augie was at his wedding. So
right.
That was a little ironic. And they have a pretty good relationship for a while, but after losing his dad, Darby's feeling out of place, especially like when they're at the funeral and she's trying really hard to make his family like her. And
Bradley's ex-wife is there and they really like her.
Yeah, it was really, really awkward and embarrassing for her. And ultimately, because she didn't fit in with his family and because chips were down, he breaks up with her.
And that kind of is becoming a theme when things are a little bit difficult, whether it's I have to choose a new job or whatever, she's getting dumped.
And we came to the conclusion that's probably because that energy that she's carrying around of I'm not lovable is attracting people into her life that aren't going to love her through thick and thin. Now let's move to Danny Two Phones. That's what she called him, because he had this girlfriend and she left his phone with him and he didn't want to get rid of it because he was hanging on to the past. And
it had all her messages on it.
Yeah, so he finally throws away this phone at Darby's encouragement. And then he becomes very eager for a relationship with Darby. And because of this over-eagerness that she finds unattractive, which is interesting because that's what she had been doing in previous relationships, she dumps him. And she hated hurting him because she knew what it felt like to be rejected, but she also felt very empowered as a chooser. And I thought it was interesting that this series portrays being rejected as a confidence crash, doing the rejecting as a confidence boost, which I actually think I kind of makes sense with my experience. Anyway, finally becoming a chooser, Darby becomes more intentional with the way she creates her love life. And we love that word intentional. As we wrote intentional courtship, we love the word intention. And that's what we see her start to do. Instead of grasping for relationships, she starts choosing.
Yeah, intention is the way we create the life we really want. Now, the next guy is Magnus. He's an up-and-coming chef. She ends up marrying him shortly after she gets promoted into a great job and he gets fired. In the moment when Magnus loses his job, kind of like Bradley losing his dad, that's when Magnus starts emotionally distancing and pulling away from her, and that distance was lonely and difficult for her. He also is a hot mess at this point. He buys a motorcycle with a credit card. I mean, he's running up credit card debt like crazy. And, he's sleeping in until 10:30 in the morning and turns down a job that would have paid him $67,000 a year because he's offended that they didn't offer him more, even though at the time he was making zero. And so he's making all kinds of really bad choices.
Well, and he's also paying attorneys
to try to sue the people who fired him.
Yeah, he's paying attorneys to go after a wrongful termination, and each one is telling him he doesn't have a case, and he's spending all this time and money and energy on it instead of moving forward with his life. Darby starts to realize that not only is she lonely, but he's making their life difficult. And once she decides she's done, it took her a couple of years. I mean, she was a very faithful, committed, supportive wife in this whole situation, but it was becoming very unhealthy for her mental health. And so she chooses to end the marriage. And as she does so, she realizes that the premise that marriage equals your worth, or that marriage will show that you're lovable, is pretty much derailed because she found out marriage didn't prove anything about her worth. Really, earlier on in this show, Darby noticed that really ridiculous people can have others agree to spend their life with them. And so that observation, combined with her experience with Magnus, teaches her that her worth is independent of whether someone is committed to her or not. She kind of had to learn that. I think a lot of people who end up divorced have to learn that, is that their worth is independent of that relationship. And it needs to be. As she frees herself up to forge her own path, she shows love for her own future. And this is where she starts intentionally building her love life. Now, in the meantime, her high school sweetheart against all odds, Luke, comes back into the picture, and he sought her out to apologize for hurting her back in the day. She kept saying, no, it's okay, it's okay.
It's a long time ago.
But he insisted on apologizing. Once she stopped and really received it, instead of just sweeping it under the rug and acting like it didn't matter, clearly it did matter. It affected her life a lot. And real healing starts happening for her as she receives that apology, as she recognizes that she can move on from that. That exchange added love to her life.
Not just romantic relationships are involved in this. Darby's mother. So Darby's mother comes to stay with her and help out after she has an appendectomy. Through this experience, she discovers some really important things about herself and where she came from. Previously in the series, she is annoyed all the time with her mother, and it seems like her mother is this narcissist who is always making everything about herself, which drives Darby a little crazy. But they have this really kind of raw open conversation where Darby levels with her mom and tells her some things. And one of the cool things that happened is Darby's mother, she's been reading Brené Brown about vulnerability and things like that, and she actually listens. And she's, instead of saying, well, you ungrateful little brat, something like that, she actually listens to her and she said, oh my gosh, I reject people first before they reject me. And she comes to this sort of realization about herself that she's got her walls up. And when they realize that they both do that, they can then start to have a relationship between themselves that's more real.
Right. And something Darby realizes is that her mom has a lot of the same feelings she does about being unlovable. They have a lot of the same fears. And so she develops empathy for her mom in that way.
Yeah, it's not an easy relationship, but it becomes rewarding once they get authentic with each other and they actually connect.
Isn't it interesting how much our parents and our family of origin can color the way we give and receive love until we intentionally decide to see differently? And once Darby starts to gain empathy for her mom and learns to see beyond her mom's limitations and instead focus on what her mom can offer and add to her life, Darby successfully adds more family love into her life by changing her mindset and letting her heart be open to love that really was there for her all along.
Another relationship that isn't romantic, Darby's best friend, Sarah. She's an interesting character, and as the series develops, you get to know Sarah as this fun-loving, partying young woman who kind of has Peter Pan syndrome. She kind of is refusing to grow up and mature into a more responsible adult. She wants to stay young as long as she can, but as a result, she loses her primary relationship, her boyfriend, James, who chooses to move on without her. He renovates a house in New Jersey and he wants to build a family there. And he tells her, look, I'm moving into this house, whether you come or not. After that, she doesn't come with him, but she becomes reckless with drugs and alcohol, and all the symbols of her youth. And she just starts spinning out of control in a really immature kind of way. Then what happens, Kathy?
Well, after bailing her out of multiple jams with friends and even with a situation with theft and just a whole slew of crazy things, Darby finally gives this best friend of hers, Sarah, a loving but firm ultimatum that she needed to go to rehab or she was out.
That day.
That's right. It broke her heart to have to resort to that, but she really loved her friend Sarah, and she loved herself enough to protect her own mental health. I know Priscilla Presley once said that she had to let Elvis go and let fate have him because he was also an addict. And the really cool thing in this series is that once Sarah no longer had an enabling best friend, she cleaned up her life and finally grew up.
So they were able to be even better friends because Darby had let her go and let her figure out things for herself, and she had matured. And ultimately that added more love to their friendship.
And it might not have gone that way, but either way, Darby was better off because she was allowing her mental health to take priority. And then she also got the blessing of her friend coming around because she stopped enabling her.
So Darby eventually connects with her old boyfriend, Augie, again. And just when they're both kind of deciding that their lives are kind of incompatible and there's things they don't really like about each other and how they interact.
Even though they're really comfortable in that relationship, and she called him he's like an old pair of jeans. So they're very comfortable, they get along great, they just want different things.
Right. But by the time they figure that out, Darby is already pregnant and they have to learn how to co-parent together.
And it's interesting that they had that conversation. Then the pronouncement of her pregnancy happens, and there was just this clear decision that they weren't going to be together, but they were going to have a baby. And they had to figure it out. And they did a pretty good job.
Right.
So as this series wraps up, it's interesting that she didn't end up with Luke, who came back into the picture as her high school sweetheart. And she didn't end up with Augie, who came back into the picture as her first adult relationship. I think that's often what we see in these kind of romantic comedies, but that's not what happens. And I think it's really refreshing that the way the series ends is Darby is busy living her life. She starts being comfortable in her own skin and just living her best life and enjoying her friendships and her family. And then while she's busy living her life, her person comes into her life, and his name is Grant. And you don't really get to know their relationship a lot, but what you do learn is that it doesn't have all the drama and all of the angst that her previous relationships had.
He's reliable, he's steady, he's even predictable. By this time, Darby has had it with all the drama, the emotional bankruptcy of her prior relationships. She wants a guy with some strength, with some reliability, and with a guy who's solid. And it's funny, it reminds me one time when Kathy and I were talking, and she said something about how, there were these 3 different people she was choosing between. Who do I want to become serious with? She said, I decided by that time that Jeff made the most sense. And I said, yeah, picture yourself on the back of the Love Boat, looking up at the moon. And she turns to me and says, Jeff, you just make so much sense. It's not that romantic of an idea, is it? But in fact it is, because you're picking out somebody to build a life with. And who is going to be best able to do that with you? Who's going to do the work to understand you, to be there for you? It's not butterflies in your stomach that determine that. It's character.
And she built a lot of character along the way in this series. And I really love how it ended. I love the journey. The moral of this series, I believe, is as we mature in our relationships, as we grow as people, we become more comfortable with ourselves and with our lives, and we're able to attract more healthy relationships when we are less anxious to be in a relationship and to try and keep a relationship at all costs.
Yeah, and if we're addicted to drama and seeking validation, that's always going to be hard. I like that movie, Love Comes Softly. Mrs. Graham says, sometimes love isn't fireworks. Sometimes love just comes softly. That might be the more real, more tangible kind of love. So watch for it.
And this series definitely it does a good job of demonstrating that. Thanks for joining us for another episode on LilyTube. We wish you all the love in the world, not just in your romantic relationships, but also in your friendships, in your family, and even in your relationship with yourself. Because love in later years is amazing, especially when you're intentional about it. Anytime is a great time for more love in your life. Thanks for joining us for another week on LilyTube. If you enjoy what you see, support us by liking, commenting, and sharing your favorite videos with others who could benefit.
Our mission is to help single adults intentionally heal from loss to create a happy life and healthy relationships.
If you'd like to immerse yourself deeper into your own personal development and relationship journey, visit our website at loveinlateryears.com for even more resources. We are here for you.